Welcome back once again to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. Tonight's discussion will be from a viewer's comment. This particular comment kind of struck home, but I'll go ahead and read it and then respond to it, thinking this is probably a common question, so I figured I'd cover it. Question is, I'm pretty good with the situation I had in my waking hours, but I still constantly dream about her. It makes me want to break no contact. Why do I still dream about her? Now, we have to keep in mind that is the only information that I have available, but I think I pretty much get the idea. My assumption would be that this dear, gentle viewer was involved with a toxic monster person and probably realized it and then started the no contact, which really is the only way, because the other person is in such a fantasy twisted world, it'll never mesh with yours. If you're in reality and you're dealing with that, well, they don't blend, they don't mix. But my assumption is he has disposed of her, but yet he still finds himself dreaming about her. Well, I think there are a few reasons for this type of situation because I've experienced the same thing, but not with her. I don't know who she is. There are a few things you have to keep in mind when you consider such questions. I mean, when we go back to the question, in waking hours. Well, in waking hours, you are awake, and so you can realize what exactly happened. Like, oh, I fell for this person, and then later found out this person was no good, for lack of better words. But then again, at the same time, if, for example, you heard a third party saying to you, oh, I met this terrible person that did A, B, C, and D, you'd probably be like, well, get rid of that person. Well, it's not so easy if it's you dealing with that person, and that's where we are here. The first consideration here to make is we're all human beings. Well, most of us are human beings. We do have an instinct to be social creatures. And then, of course, we're in this society where we're encouraged to pair up with that special person. So it's common for us to, even in our young days when we're just kids, to think, one day I'm going to find a person to be with. And when you're going through this process, you're not ever thinking, oh, I'm going to find someone to be with who sweeps me off my fate and then turns out to be an evil, wicked witch. And we don't ever think that. We think we want to find a nice person who will be nice for us. But it's a basic human desire to be accepted as well. And then, of course, private parts come into the picture, too. That takes it to a whole different level, lead things down a completely different track, and many times you'll want that to be your romantic partner. It's a shame when you find out that romantic partner has evil, wicked tendencies that are hidden from you, and behaviors that are hidden from you. But that's what we have to keep in mind first. What will happen in many cases when you meet anybody? You may have wishful thinking and just think everything's great, or you may go slowly. It doesn't matter. You have probably some kind of ideal in your mind about, if I ever found a partner, it would be this and this and this. Reality doesn't always match up with our fantasy or our ideas. So what will typically happen is you'll find yourself with perhaps a cluster B monster, and you will be a little awkward feeling at first because it's a new person, which is normal. But if you start blending your lives together in more and more ways, your brain is going to go back to this ideal you had, and you probably will try somehow to fit it into that ideal. Because we all know we can imagine what the perfect person would be like, But then if you meet a new person, it's not ever going to be exactly like you pictured, usually. So anyway, with this type of person, it's different from other regular, non-cluster B, non-toxic relationships. This one is very different. It's not normal, whatever normal is. My own experience is I've met lots of people when I was a kid, when I was a teen, when I was a young adult, and so on, and I've learned the social process. And I know that I might have an affiliation with one person and feel closer to it, and maybe not so much with another person. Well, I also know what it is to become close to someone. With the cluster B monster, what many times happens, you might meet casually and quickly the person's in love with you immediately, which, as far as my experience goes, like, well, the person may think they're in love, but we've only known each other 24 hours, so I don't think it's the appropriate term. But regardless, these creatures will defy all that type of stuff, and they rewrite realities. It's like, I know we just met yesterday, but I am in love. It's like, all right. So the situation is not normal to begin with. And many of us will meet such a creature who will be so enthusiastic about how wonderful we are, even though we know they don't even know enough about us to form an opinion. They know it's an underlying human desire to connect with another person, to be desired and appreciated by another human. Well, that's what they're doing in their love bombing crap stage. Part of your mind is probably thinking, this is kind of fast, and you can compare it to yourself. You might have met somebody one day and thought you really felt strongly about them, but then after a few days, the thoughts changed. And so a lot of this will be going through your head too when you meet this creature, but sometimes we just want to believe it, to think, well, who cares that I'm analyzing things too much? This person must really feel this way, and we will fall into their trap in many cases. But this is just in general. But you have to keep in mind that the first step was not normal. It was too quick. But then at the same time, we think of the discard, which is 100% opposite of that love bombing crap and the idealization. And that alone is like taking you from, if there's a scale, from A and yanking you to Z. And A is one extreme of positivity, Z is one extreme of hateful, evil crap. It's just not within a regular person's scope of experience to endure such a thing. Plus, when you pull in the affiliation with another person and the connection and thinking that you're plus the private parts, getting involved, it makes a big confusing mess. But regardless, the situation is not normal to begin with. I could see how this would contribute to your dreams, because in real life, all this stuff has already happened, and you know what else has happened, and you're thinking, okay, I'm not talking to that person. There's so many pieces involved in this other stuff, the beginning, and the fact it was feeding into your feelings of being recognized and appreciated and all that, and then all of a sudden it's taken away. That is very devastating for a regular person, because normally you don't meet somebody like that. You meet someone new, you might have a good time with them once, you might get to know them a little bit more and more each day, and maybe after a few months feel a little closer. But these creatures that are cluster B, they're like after a date or two, they're in love and they're ready for the marriage. Which is not realistic. But if you say that to them,
oh, I can't help, I feel this way.
Well, then, honey, you're retarded. And a lot of us will be nice, and we don't want to discard them and get rid of them just because they're that way. We just choose to think, well, maybe this person's just naive and doesn't know it. Well, that's not enough reason for me to just vanish, so you continue. And that's the mistake, of course, because you continue. But that universal desire of being wanted and understood and appreciated is there. And when you're with this person all the time, you're nude with the person, you're together, you're seeing each other at your best and worst, well, it makes a strong impression in your mind. And of course, most of us, when we're going through this, don't really want to even consider the fact that it's all fake, that it's real for us, but fake for the other one. It's just, that's not something we want to accept. So a lot of times we'll rationalize whatever, and that's what makes it go on longer. But the extremes are one of the pieces. There are several pieces here, but that the extremes from extreme adoration to extreme hatred and non-existence is just unrealistic and difficult if it's being presented to you as reality. Plus, if you're in a situation where you've already been involved with such a creature and it ends for whatever reason, and then you meet a new person who's like all gung-ho to get married after one date, you may then say, oh no, whoa, slow down, and then explain your circumstance. Well, chances are this other person is just another variety of the same cluster B monster that saw whatever it is you radiate that they like to chase after. You may recognize the love bombing type behaviors and it gives you a deja vu, and you may even say, hey, you're acting just like the last person I was involved with. And of course that's when the gaslighting begins of,
Oh, don't you dare compare me. I'm nothing like anyone else you know.
when of course your gut feeling's telling you this feels the very same. But anyway, the point of this all is that this was a very significant experience in your life because it incorporates those things. Remember when you're a kid and you think, well, one day if I find a partner, I'm going to find someone I get along with and who's honest with me and who loves me for me and all that stuff. You're not expecting to get a fraud, but you don't know that the fraud's there, so you will allow yourself to open up and get closer. And of course, it's usually much later down the road when you actually piece together what actually happened. Because remember, when you're dealing with this type of creature and you put together 2 or 3 pieces, you can't expect to get an honest reaction from the person if you say, hey, I think the reason why you did this is because of A and B, and they'll be like,
That's not true.
even though it's probably 100% true. These people are bullies. They can't let you win, so they're going to tell you that you're wrong. But it's devastating, and our unconscious brain is at work when we're asleep because you internally are mixed up. I mean, you've gone through the situation of thinking you were connecting to a great person who you felt validation from and you felt validation for, but then the reality is it was phony, and it's just too much for us. So dreams are probably a way of trying to reconcile the situation. It's a very significant part of your life. And yes, it can be complex post-traumatic stress disorder inducing because it's just so extreme. Now, this viewer has also mentioned the part about these dreams are making him want to break the no contact, which I don't know the whole story, so I don't know where the no contact came from, but more than likely the person realized what he was dealing with and followed the right path. There's a temptation to go right back. That's why I did the video, because I understand that temptation, because remember, your brain is all scrambled up. Parts of it are thinking you found the great person for you, but at the same time, other parts don't fit with it. There's a tendency for you to want to think that those parts that don't fit can be fixed and then focus on the other parts. But with this type of narcissistic monster, what we have to eventually learn is the differences are irreconcilable because you're dealing with a faulty product. You're dealing with a monster who never developed into a full human being, and any glimpses of a human being you saw were fabricated. But again, we're not taught this. We're not raised to think that the person we're involved with might be a covert cluster B monster fool. So we have to take it as it comes because the person's made such an impression on us and tapped into those parts of ourselves that we were reserving for that special person that we tried to make fit. That probably causes your brain to be thinking about the person. It's not a valid justification, though, or reason for breaking the no contact. And you can probably think of other flings you've had, other dates you've had, other people you've gotten involved with, and you probably wonder, because this narcissistic monster creature is like making you be awake at night and or dreaming about it and so on, but you can think back to someone else you casually met and had a little fling with. And if you compare the two, it's like a no-brainer. It's like, well, I don't care about that fool, but this one I do. Well, that serves to tell you that it's possible to get over such things. But at the same time, it also indicates that this other person that you're not concerned about is probably because it was not on this roller coaster of extreme opposites. It was probably a person who was more or less genuine with no fake agenda. Those types are more realistic. Like I said before, you go out with somebody once, you laugh about this joke and about that joke, but that's just like one piece. And then maybe a week later you see each other again, and it goes over for months and years, and eventually you get to a point where you're close and you really like them. Well, all those steps are skipped with these creatures, and you sometimes might want to just think, well, I got lucky this time. Normally, for me to feel as strong as that person does, I have to have a lot of time with them, but this person really loves me. Oh, and we jump right in, and and they know this. Of course they know this. And that's how they lure us into their goddamn labyrinth. Plus, they have the X, if you had one, and they can use that against you to tell you that you're being paranoid. Well, there's one little bonus piece here that I think is important that doesn't take away the pain or the problem. From what I understand, can't guarantee, but these creatures do not dream. They are reptilian shapeshifters, or they are cloned humans or something that's not a regular human, where they don't have dreams. Just to read this question as well about the dream, because I have lots of dreams all the time. Melatonin-induced dreams are the best. Haven't had a lucid one lately, but those are fun too. Lucid dream where you know that you're in a dream and you can just do anything and know that there'll be no consequence. Well, that's kind of like being a narcopath or a cluster B monster, but in this case, you know you're in a dream, so it's not going to have consequences. But these fools, they do it in real life. Hopefully I shed some light on your question. Be careful. Do not break your no contact for those dreams.
Oh, I am the narcopath, and I missed you.
Hi, it's me, the narcopath. I need your all's help. I need to find a new job. That's right. I was a paid shill, but believe me, it wasn't worth it. They assigned me to Sandy Hook, and it was the most retarded thing I've ever done. Basically what I do is I scope out hoax videos. You should go online. Look for that film they call We Need to Talk About Sandy Hook. Watch that one, for starters. Whoever Obama was following, for some reason, wants the public to believe this trash is real. So what I had to do was troll around on various videos that pointed out the fraud for what it is, because it is.
There are people in the powers that shouldn't be who are desperately trying to maintain this story, and I was listening to one of their meetings. It's because so much money was involved, and because it's a major fraud, because all these people are having their heartstrings pulled on with sympathy, and they're giving their fortunes out, and these families are getting rich, and they don't want to lose out on that, and they don't want to admit that it was fake, because if they do, then they're afraid of lawsuits. You know how it works. So my job was to go on to these videos, and I saw some pretty good ones where they pretty much blew it out of the water. My job description was I had to stick to the original facial narrative. So I would look at the comments. I'd see somebody saying, this is so fake, look at this detail and look at that detail. As soon as they started pulling that crap, I would chime on in. For example, one person was talking about the dreadful crisis actors they had for that one. Ugh. They should have had me on the hiring team because they were retarded and disgusting without any tears. At least I can cry real tears.
But as far as the job goes, I mean, I tried. I gave it my all, but it's kind of tough because I'd see people talk about the crisis actors, which I agree are retarded, but I had to say, there were no crisis actors at Sandy Hooker. Shame on you. You are disrespecting the dead, which, by the way, are alive. I met a few of them. People would respond, and they would attack me. I don't blame them, but I was on the clock. And they would point out specific details, and I would just come back and say, well, do you have any proof that that's a crisis actor? And I really didn't have much to say, and I pretty much got ambushed by these people because they're right. And I tried to tell the boss, like, why can't I join the other side? Why am I defending this crap? And I was put on a warning for that. I thought, you know what, I don't think I'm going to make it here. Because I was getting enjoyment out of the videos. I was loving it. And it felt stupid for me to go in there and tell them how wrong they are when they gave me some additional insight on how it was fake even more. So I'm looking for a new job because even though I am fake and I'm a narcopath, I don't want to do that for a living.
Oh, and you poor naive thing. I'll never forget the time before you knew about my extracurricular activities. I knew that you weren't seeing anybody else but me. And that time that we both mysteriously turned out to have crabs. Crotch critters. We had to scratch, and I knew the look on your face. You were thinking, how could this happen? And I know how it happened. I had sex with people on the street day and night, and you didn't know about it. I conveniently told you that I must have caught it at the tanning bed. That's where crabs come from. And yes, we had to go to the laundromat and bring all of our clothing and
go to the doctor and buy medicine to scrape on our private parts because they were so itchy. You weren't the first lover I had to do that with. And I realized after this time, you know what, it's not worth it. So I made up excuses and left town. I've used up the town we were in, so I need to start somewhere else. That happens with the narcopath. I'm just too much for some communities. So I've got to go to other communities and start fresh. I really enjoyed this talk with you. Maybe you understand me more now.